Yeah. Hello. Welcome to Uncommunity episode 3 of the interview. And today we have Charlie Ward of uh, Weekend Club. Charlie, welcome to the show. I'm
Hey,
so
how's it
excited
going?
to have you here. Please, why don't you start with yourself? Who are you, and what is Weekend Club, and what is your role there? And yeah, how it came all together, how it all started. Let's just start from there.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Mohammed. Thanks for having me on. Much appreciated. So I'm Charlie Ward. So I'm the founder of Weekend Club. I'm based in London, but we're a community. There's members all over the world now. So do you want me to start with like kind of how Weekend Club started? Then we'll get a bit more into that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's hear the story of how it all happened. I think that's very important.
Yeah, sure. So it all starts about 2 years ago. So I started a monthly indie hackers meetup in London called Indie Beers. So for those that don't know, Indie Hackers is a popular online community of bootstrappers and kind of solo entrepreneurs and that kind of thing. There's a bit of a kind of SaaS and technology focus, but there's also lots of people building productized services and communities. So it's not just developers necessarily. I got very interested in this, and there was a meetup called Indie London, but it was only every 3 or 4 months, and it was kind of like a big meetup with speakers and stuff. But I was like, oh, I kind of just want to just go to the pub and just meet people regularly. So I just started Indie Beers. It was just very simple. It was every month. We didn't have any speakers or anything. And we just go to the pub and just kind of chat about products and what we're working on and stuff. And so that started to get fairly popular. So after about I did it every month pretty much for a year, and we had about 500 meetup members, and we started to build a mailing list. So probably had like 150, 200 people on there. So not like massive, but it's not like the biggest scene on earth. But starting to build an audience actually turned out to be useful later on when I wanted to launch Weekend Club. So about a year in, I'd had a few conversations with different members. But one thing that kept coming up was people said they want to kind of not just like meet at the pub, but maybe like kind of work with other indie hackers or bootstrappers a bit more directly.
Mhm.
Um, and it doesn't even necessarily like work with them as a co-founder, but just like be in the same space of where you're working on stuff and can share notes on what you're working on and that kind of thing. So the pivotal moment was a conversation with my friend Wilhelm Klopp. So he is the founder of Simple Poll. It's a Slack plugin for posting polls, which is really cool. And I was like, kind of what I'm like really enjoying doing this, but and I just did it for fun, honestly. Indie Beers. I was thinking, what else could we do? Like, what would be interesting for you that we could do with Indie Beers? He basically said, oh, I'd like to work with kind of other bootstrappers and indie hackers, even just like irregular, not like necessarily all the time, but like maybe even semi-regularly. And so basically I came up with a format which was to do on Saturdays we would run co-working sessions with a bunch of other indie hackers in London, and we kind of took it from there. So that's how originally how it came about. So it wasn't remote like it is now. It was like in person in a co-working space, and that was quite interesting. So like I went through a kind of typical like bootstrapper like approach to validating it. So I had a couple more conversations with people. Then I just threw up a landing page and I just posted it on on my Twitter and indie hackers and stuff to see if anyone would sign up, like if anyone would be interested. And yeah, like I got a bunch of sign-ups and people interested. I then managed to find a co-working space. I emailed a few places, but shout out Ben Davies at Ministry of Startups. It's a co-working space in East London in Whitechapel.
Mhm.
It's really good. It's really good value actually. And he called me back within like 60 seconds of me emailing him saying, sounds cool, let's do it. It was honestly like it's one of those things you're like, this is just like meant to come together, because like everything kind of just like was, not every project I've ever worked on like has been easy or has gone well, but everything it seems to just go well like at each stage with this,
Mhm.
which is like unusual for me anyway. And we just ran the trial session at first. So the steps were, will anyone sign up on email to like that they're interested? Then it was, will anyone turn up? And luckily they did turn up. So it was like a good 20 people or so. So it was full, I think. It's not a huge space. So that was good. And the way we ran it is actually very similar to how we run the Saturday sessions now. So it's like a 1-day sprint. So like in technology teams, you work in like Scrum teams. So you work in sprints and you have a morning stand up, you have and you have a review at the end of the sprint. We kind of did that, but in 1 day. So we all just kind of was saying like, everyone was like introduce themselves, what they're working on today, what their project is, what they're trying to get done today, basically. It was a good way for people to get to know each other and understand like what they're trying to get done, basically. And at lunch, everyone just grabs lunch and has a chat about whatever they're working on. At the end of the day, we had a demo, so everyone presents what they got done that day or what they're working on, and it was just really fun. It had just like a really like kind of magic feeling to it. And so I was like, okay, like people seem to enjoy it. I sent a survey out to get a bit more feedback. And the next is like, will anyone pay for it? So people signed up to a website, people turned up, people seem to enjoy it. But now it's like, okay, will people pay for it? So I put together, I created a Stripe account as you do in these situations. I worked out a kind of like, okay, we'll do it twice a month in this space. We also had a Slack as well, but the Slack was like an afterthought originally. Like originally it was just like, okay, we might as well have a Slack because we're all in the co-working space, like you do in a regular team. Luckily like a bunch of people signed up. So I got about 15 sign-ups after the first month. I was like, okay, this is an actual business. So I was just I was running that and growing it and developing it. And I actually do have a full-time job, like even now. It was kind of outside that, and I was still running indie beers as well, by the way. So I was still doing my meetups for indie beers and stuff. And that was the original version, actually. And I think almost everyone who was there at the beginning is actually still with us.
That's a high, like I guess retention people call it. Like people are still there. People who joined in the first cohort. I mean, kind of you measure on these kind of different terminologies, and people are still there. I mean, that's a great thing to hear. Actually, like I think people who joined in the beginning and are still there. I mean, that's a very good validation. For I guess it's for anyone who is running things like that. Because these are your people, these are your kind of like they want to be with you on what you do, which is very helpful for anyone who is starting out, or like if anyone is even starting out, right? Like I think that's it's very much of a kind of a opportunity for them to find that those people by providing and creating value on and on. So I think that's what you did for like by running these offline events, and then on a meeting people in the co-working spaces. I'm sure these people would have like found it very helpful, right?
And I think it was also helpful that in London there was there's quite a good like bootstrapper community. Like I think there was a study recently, and I think London's maybe one of the number one cities on earth in terms of the number of bootstraps SaaS entrepreneurs, kind of thing, which like fits in well with indie hackers. And I've heard that in London's one of those active indie hacker cities in the world. It's like more active than say New York, which you might expect to be more active than London. And one thing I'd say is like in starting a community, like I think it is a bit easier to start there's some things are easier about an in-person community, some things are easier like online, but I think in my experience it's easier for people to build relationships like when they meet in person. Like it's just faster, it's more of a natural thing. Whereas remote, it's like you can more quickly get to a large community, but it's a bit harder to actually build the connections between people. It takes a bit more effort and a bit more time from what I've seen. But it was good that we had that early community from Indie Beers. Like a lot of people already knew each other from Indie Beers, and also another meetup called Indie London, which we later merged with Indie Beers. That's another story. And so that meant that it wasn't because there were pre-existing relationships, it didn't take as long to kind of build that community as maybe it would have, I think.
Yeah, right. Charlie, like I guess I've been following you for a couple of months now. I love what you do. It's a pretty good thing that you have done started. So tell me this, like I would love to know, like so you can convert it from offline only meetups or offline only events, and now you're completely online. I mean, not thanks, but like it all happened due to COVID and other things, right? So,
Mm.
if someone is starting today, right, they can't do an offline event even if they want to, right? Because
Mm.
you can't meet people right now in a group. So, what are the like suggestions or kind of thing, like what would you do to kind of do that shift so that you have an active online
Mm.
thriving community?
Yeah, so I think the fact that people had like, met in person a lot, meant that it was easier for me than, for some, I think that was slightly easier than creating one from scratch, completely remote, potentially. But the way we did it was, when it was like in March time, and I realized, okay, this is not going to work in co-working spaces anymore, and I don't know how long, the situation's going to last. So I was like, okay, should I just quit? Should I just shut it down? But I thought, you know what, actually, I enjoyed doing this too much. It'd be a disservice to my members who enjoyed it to do that as well. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot and do it remote. And I think one of the big lessons is like you can't just take like a offline experience and just dump it online exactly the same and expect it to work. Like
Yep.
you need to rethink it. It doesn't mean you have to change everything, but you do need to rethink it from the ground up a little bit. And it's also helpful to think like there are some advantages of being remote rather than in person. Um, there's some things that I don't think you'll ever get remote, like you can get in person. Like say like a good example is like at lunchtime for like unorganized conversation. Like at lunchtime when you're a co-working space, like you don't need to really manage it. Everyone just like has a chat, gets some food, has some coffee, and just manages to have a good time and meet people. But like it's very hard to replicate that online. Like we actually tried at the beginning. We were just like a bunch of us would get I don't know like get on a Zoom, and there was like no like structure to it, and it actually doesn't work as well. Like I'm so we worked out that we have to like think of this a bit more to make it work, basically. So yeah, first of all, I would say just like be deliberate in how you organize it, and like don't just dump an offline experience online. It needs a bit more. Say you're having like Zoom discussions, it needs a lot more kind of cultivating and management by the community leader. So for example, instead of just us, we all get on a Zoom at lunch to chat, we'll have like a specific conversation topic, whether it's like note taking or how to talk to users, or stuff that's relevant to the community. But and people will be prepared before, because they'll know in advance that that's what it's about, and I will like kind of prepare a bit and guide the conversation and that kind of thing. And it works so much better than like just everyone just jump on a Zoom kind of thing. Like another thing I realized we could do is like one thing we couldn't really do in when it's in person is it was quite difficult to like if we wanted to get guests in to do a Q&A, like expert guests, like getting them there in person like wouldn't be that easy or sustainable. But when you're all remote, you can all jump on a Zoom and do a Q&A. Like we did one today, with a bootstrapper called James Berry. He's got a really cool product and Depop sales bot, and we're able to just have a really good interactive Q&A, and it's like easy. It's pretty easy to set up. So there's some advantages to it as well. So yeah, I'll say another thing is like in setting up like a remote community is like be quite mindful about what tool you're using. As in like, are you going to use Slack or Circle or Discord or whatever you're going to use? Because there are advantages and disadvantages to each of them. I don't think any of them's perfect. Like it depends on your community, like what they need. So like, for example, like I know there's a bunch of communities that are doing well with Circle, for example, which is a good product,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really work for Weekend Club. And the reason why is that it works very well. It's like good for asynchronous communication. It's kind of like a forum, but because Weekend Club is about like it's like live events based. So we still do the Saturday co-working sessions, but we do them remotely over Zoom and Slack. And there's a lot of it's about like real time messaging, and like, you know, someone shares something, someone comments, someone leaves an emoji on the comment. It's very like fast and interactive kind of thing. And so Slack's actually the best tool for that. Like it's the best one. It's better than Discord even. And the
Mhm.
good thing is for my audience, you know, they're quite technologists kind of thing, you know, work in tech or marketing or content, and they all have Slack pre-installed on their desktop as well. So, you know,
Yeah.
like I know that everyone's going to have it on their desktop, and so it tends to work. And it's not perfect. Like the messaging history thing, where you have to pay to remove the messaging history, is annoying, but the kind of strengths outweigh the weaknesses for me. Yeah. So those are kind of some things I would like suggest thinking about in, like, you know, making a remote community. Apart from that, it's just, you know, there are some differences, but like the basics of creating a community like are probably the same whether it's online or offline, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. I think you like it was a great point, right? Like regarding the platforms and the tools. Like it's, I mean, like I mean, you see tons of internet resources, or kind of people talking about what tools do I use, right? I
Yeah,
think that's not right. I mean, they should think about why I need to use that tool particular, right?
yeah,
Now for someone like you, Slack is a good way because you like it's real time conversations happening, right? And for some other communities could be, like I don't need a real time conversations. It's asynchronous is good, so I can use any kind of Discourse forum or a circle, right? Which is kind of a good product. But then again, like we need to kind of make sure that people, it's the people, right? uh, at the end of it is the people. Like you have to have that kind of like audience around you, who would go to what platform you choose, and like never mind like what platform did you choose, I'm okay with it. If you choose Slack, I'm okay. If you choose Discord, I'm okay, right? But
yeah,
you have, it's that time frame you have to it's a hard time. It is like, it is hard, it is not easy to build a community. Like you have to be in that space, you have to know those peoples, you have to know why are you doing what are you doing, right? And then you get to decide what platform.
yeah, agree.
So yeah, okay, that's was good thing, right? And even who I talk to also, I mean, when I speak to them, I explain the same things.
Mm.
Like, let's not go with a platform first. Let's kind of find out why the community, what you want to build.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. So yeah, you know, what I was saying before, I say it's more about just like how to like think about remote versus um so how to think about like online community building versus offline. But yeah, for sure, there's like the tool you use is like not the first thing you should think about. Absolutely, I mean, the first thing you should think about is simply who is your community for, and like what the purpose of it is, kind of thing. Like I think if you haven't got those things right, then the rest of it probably doesn't matter. But yeah, the tools and stuff are some other stuff to think about.
Yeah, yeah. Charlie, I think like I would like to know, like I'm not sure if you can share the number. So I like it would be very interesting to know like how many people are there in the community right now. And then my next question is, so I've read your blog post and stuff. I've seen your webinar or a session.
Mm.
So you speak about, like you talk about engagement, and I would like it'd be very interesting to kind of know what are the tricks, tricks that you have done to kind of get these members engaged in your community.
Yeah. So Yeah, the tips to get people engaging. So yeah, so there's a few things. I mean, first of all, you know, if you're leading a community or you're a community manager, especially like this is especially true like early on in a community, but like, you know, you kind of lead by example at first. So
Yeah,
you need to be active and you need to be on your community every day, like at least once a day, like if not more. And like make sure that no one has like if someone posts, you need to make sure they're getting a response, whether it's you responding or you
hmm,
like tag someone else, say, hey, like, you know, like Jackie knows about this. Like, what do you think? You need to be kind of facilitating like that they get answered. Because if someone, say, if you start a new community, sorry, you join a new community and you post 3 times and you don't get an answer those 3 times, you're probably not going to go back anymore,
again, yeah,
in my opinion. And so, especially early on, you need to make sure, like, it's quite basic, but you need to make sure people are getting responses. They like want to interact and engage. And, you know, if they do that and they get a good response, they're going to come back again. So you need to make sure, like, that's happening, like that's important. Um, you know, people engage more when the community is right for them, and that you need to make sure you understand your members like really well and understand like what they want and what like why they've joined this community. So for example, at Weekend Club, I know that it's bootstrappers who are looking for like a support network, and accountability to get more done. So I know that they're looking for you know, feedback if they post some work, for example. They're looking for like, you know, sometimes they'll ask a question, they need help with something, they want an answer on something. Sometimes they just want to vent and say, oh, like this didn't go so well, and like kind of have a chat with someone about it. And sometimes they just want to see what other people are working on at the time. So, you know, I think of those kind of like main like use cases or reasons they join, and just you can design the community around that. So like, you know, an underrated thing I think is like the setup of your like products. So like on Slack, like you should think a lot about what your different Slack channels are for and how many you have, like depending on like, you know, what your community is. So for example, we have like a ships channel where people post updates on what they're working on, and that helps with accountability and for transparency.
yeah,
um, but you know, people also want to like meet people like randomly. So we have like a channel called Coffee Club, and we'll randomly intro you to someone every couple of weeks. So you know, the first thing is to understand what your community wants from the community, and then you can design the experience around that. One other thing that really helps is having like kind of like re- repeated like ceremonies. I want to say ceremony, or like, you know, like like things that happen regularly, like every week or month or whatever it is that people keep coming back to, which reminds people and like give them a reason to engage. So you know, look back to a little bit about weekend clubs. So like we still run the Saturday remote co-working sessions, and yeah, it's like a, like I said, it's like a 1 day sprint. And but it's every week. People don't have to come every week now, but they know that that's something they can turn up to and they can engage. So they post what they're working on, they meet other people, they share their work, that kind of thing. And every Monday we just do like a weekly update on what we're working on and how things are going. So that's like another kind of reason that people come back. They think, okay, it's Monday, it's time to like post my update, kind of thing. So yeah, thinking about like what kind of like similar like events or ceremonies relevant for your community, there could be those like kind of reminders of like, oh yeah, I need to like go and do this or say this or whatever. Yeah, so those are a few things that like I definitely find work. But you know, also just building real relationships with people. If like ultimately, like, you know, if people are part of a community for long enough, they're going to like they're going to become friends and stuff. And
yeah,
once you get to that, if you can get to that stage, then it's much easier because people just go on. It's like a group chat. It's like, you know, a group chat on WhatsApp at that point. And then, you know, people need less prompting. It's just like more natural. Like on Weekend Club now, like you can see analytics of the posts that were in public channels versus direct messages, and a lot of like a big proportions in direct messages now. So it's stuff that I can't even see, but I know it's happening beneath
yeah,
the surface. So that's like, you know, something that is one thing to get there, but then you need to maintain that. So that's, you know, I'm trying to maintain that
yeah,
basically.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's great. I think yeah, I love the like the way that uh, you are kind of trying to make that recurring events. I believe, right? Like on like Saturdays, like remote working Saturdays. So it's like I'm sure you have seen noticed this on social media of a brands, like they have these throwback Thursdays, kind of like every Thursday they kind of post something old and something which is related to very new and that product, right? And then you have this thousands of comments on those posts, which is kind of engagement for that brand, because they have figured out, okay, maybe this is going to help us with engagement, right? So people are
Yeah,
coming back and back again. And another example for like a leadership, right? A community leader should uh, be that person who other people look up to, your members look up to, because of what you have been doing. And one of the examples, so I was listening to this other podcast, right? And they mentioned Ryan Hoover, the founder of Product Hunt, right?
mm,
He replies to like launches on Product Hunt early in the morning, right? That and every new products that he launched, he and till today I've kind of noticed he still hunts the products, right?
mm,
And that is something very interesting. Like if you want to build a community, you have to be that person who again and again comes in front of the people, talk to people like a normal human being, right? Like helping out and kind of understanding what your members or what your community needs. And that's very 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 interesting. I think just sticking from that, you have grown the community and like a lot of members, and you have been trying to do things so that you engage the community, right?
yeah.
And I like what are the uh, like today I mean, I think we've been talking about what you did in the past. What's happening today? What's happening to the Weekend Club? How are you growing on a like? What's your user acquisition? How are you growing on a day-to-day basis? And I've seen your, uh, I think you mentioned something around 2,000 or 2,500 euros per run rate.
Oh no, that was another one. I think we're not quite on there yet. But yeah, we make about our monthly recurring revenue is about $800 right now. Um, yeah, we've got about um, 32 paying subscribers at the moment. So our retention's very low. Our retention's very high. Our churn's very low. So
Okay.
no one's churned in about 4 months now, or something like that.
Mhm.
So that's good. So like in like any kind of subscription-based products, like before you focus too much on growth, I think it's important to like sort your community experience and retention out, because if you focus on growth but you've got poor retention, then it's not very efficient.
Your I'm not able to hear you. Uh, just pause.
You
Okay.
can't.
Yeah. I think I can hear you now.
Okay, what do you want to do? Do you want me to just carry on?
Yeah.
Or
Just yeah. I had paused the recording, so let's just continue.
yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I think it's important to focus on retention and the community experience before you focus on growth too much, because if you're focusing on growth but you've got like lots of churn, you'll be gaining one person but you'll be losing one person. So it's more efficient to first fix your retention, so no one's leaving or the numbers are very low, and then focus on growth after that. And it's just a much better way to do it. Um, so this year I was kind of focused on, like, I mean, it was from March, April, kind of pivoting Weekend Club to remote. And like, there's lots went into that, from this making it weekly rather than twice a month,
Mhm.
opening up to people all over the world. So we've got people not just in the UK now, but Australia, the USA, Greece, places like that. Adding all the discounts. So yeah, quite a lot of effort was spent on that. And now we've got to the point where, okay, it's going well. Retention's good. I'm now starting to focus more on growth. So that's only been in the last like few weeks I started to focus on that a bit more. But like what's worked for us so far is like we were like an audience first. It's kind of like an audience first company. So we started out with the Indie Beers newsletter, which had a couple of hundred people, and I've actually about 2 months ago I merged the Indie Beers meetup with Indie London. So that's now one thing now. So I now run Indie London as well as Weekend Club. So Indie London is London's largest indie hackers community. So we've got Slack of 400 people. We've got about 550 people on the mailing list. So that's like quite a big channel for us. So, you know, we use that, and we use the, you know, the event listings and that sort of thing. And it really helps with SEO as well, actually. Something that's interesting, if you have a backlink from meetup.com or Hopin, they have really strong, these are really strong backlinks. Like you can it works pretty well. So yeah, that's actually one of the main things. I also post indie hackers milestones because most of my audience is obviously on indie hackers. So I post a milestone every month or so, and it usually sends a couple of hundred people to the site. We probably average, it's not loads of traffic, we probably average like 800 visitors a month at the moment. So it's not like, you know, not talking giant numbers just yet, but you know, I think we can get those up quite a lot. So yeah, that also members inviting their friends, and just conversations I have with people I know from the kind of London Bootstrapper community. So that's kind of it. That's all it's taken so far. But you know, I'm aware that there's a lot of stuff I haven't even tried yet. I haven't really tried any paid acquisition. I don't really have much like content. Like I want to start doing like interviews with Weekend Club members. So you know, there's a lot more to try, I think.
Yeah. Just experimenting with things, right? Because something works, something don't. So it doesn't, like it's okay. I mean, you get to learn a lot of things by just doing things like
Yeah.
A, B, C, D till like Z, right? So okay, I think you like, I would love to know like talk to her about your SEO thing, right? You said like the Hopin and the meetup.com. Like what happened actually? Like because I saw that you had this Weekend Club in the UK now. It just redirects to, I mean, like your community is shown in the first page. So what happened?
Yeah, it's quite funny. So Weekend Club has always ranked fairly well in the USA for some reason. I think in some countries, but okay, in Europe, there's a really famous nightclub called Weekend Club in
Uh,
in Berlin. Like, it's not even in London; it's in Berlin. But it's like it's pretty famous. So when people are googling Weekend Club, that's usually what they were looking for. Because I originally came up with the name like kind of, it was just like on the spot when I was talking about it originally, and I didn't check. I just got the URL. I didn't really, you know, maybe it was silly of me, but I didn't actually check to see like how hard it would be. Yeah, so I probably 3 months ago, I was on page like 10 of Google, I think, or something like that, for when you search the words Weekend Club. So you'd search the exact name and it was on page 10, which is obviously, you know, no one even goes to the bottom of the first page. So page 10, I heard from people, like, I'd heard that people had been looking for it and they couldn't find it. Like, they literally were trying to find the website to sign up and they couldn't find it. So I was like, oh my God, I got to figure this one out. So it kind of took a long time. Like, I've probably spent the last I've probably really been focusing on it for like 4 or 5 months. And the way I did it is quite simply. So on the you know, I do content. I do monthly interviews on the Indie London website, and so I would include a backlink on there, for example. When I started to post more about Weekend Club, it started getting picked up by a few other blogs. So the Trends blog by Drew Riley, they did a Trends post on paid communities, and that was a backlink. So that was really helpful, actually. That was one of the early ones. So shout out to him. Veed did a backlink to it. But yeah, one thing I was suggested was to add backlinks to event pages. So things like meetup.com, which obviously we have a meetup account for Indie London. and also Hopin. Do you know Hopin, the online events? Uh,
Yeah. They just raised some. I mean, recently they raised a lot of money for online webinars and stuff.
yeah. That's crazy because Johnny, who is the CEO of that, he's actually like, I met him from the Indie London community. I haven't actually
Ah,
seen him in a while, like
that's
probably a
very
few years.
interesting.
He was bootstrapping originally, and he's raised this like monster round. It's crazy. Like, but
Yeah.
it's a really good. He's doing it's such a good product. Like, I really like using it. So yeah, I'm really glad he did that. But anyway, so yeah, I started posting backlinks in the meetup pages and the event pages and stuff, and on Hopin, and so the meetup one I posted like 3 months ago, but it only got picked up like so okay, I use Ubersuggest to look at like where my backlinks are coming from and like
Mhm.
SEO stuff, and it only recognized it like 3 days ago, and like from that one backlink, it's now my number one backlink just from like thinking on the meetup page that I own, and it just sent it from like number. So at this point, I was like on the first page, but I was at the bottom of the first page. But it took it from the bottom of the first page to number one just from that one link. So I do think like running events and backlinking through event pages is like a kind of I don't know if it's underrated, but I haven't really heard many people talk about it before. But it seems to me like it works really well for me. So you know, if you're watching or listening to this and you're looking for some like new SEO methods, maybe you should
Yeah.
try it.
It's a hack. That's the hack. Just Charlie just found.
But I will actually. I should say that I didn't invent this. So I was told to do this by Saba, who runs Veed, who knows a lot about SEO growth. So
SEO.
thanks,
Okay.
Saba. So I didn't come up with this myself, but yeah, it works.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
very interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, I think we're coming to an end. Let's kind of like I want to know like tell me like what are the biggest like if you had done this today, like what would you have done differently, and what are the lessons that you have learned building this? Because you have a full-time job and then you have this. Like I'm sure it's very kind of like to kind of it's difficult to manage both things, right? So how are you doing it?
yeah. I mean, honestly, like I think the fact that it's like an event-based business that we have an event happening every Saturday, it like keeps me on my toes. So like I'm always kind of working towards like a proper deadline, which is I mean is helpful for me anyway. But you just got to show up every day basically, and you've got to like I've had to really just like prioritize things, and there's ideas that I want to do, and I just realized like I'm not going to be able to do them properly. So like for example, a while back I wanted to do a podcast for Weekend Club, like to talk to some of our members, but I just know I don't have time to actually like maybe I have time to record it, but I don't have time to edit it and like market it.
Hmm.
And so maybe I'll do that one day, but just like just being like disciplined, ruthless prioritization has helped. Um, that's kind of, yeah, I think that's probably it, to be honest. And frankly, because of COVID, it's given me more time than
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
have had to work on
yeah,
stuff. So obviously it's like a terrible thing, but like that's been one like small benefit for me. It's given me a little bit more time to work on projects and stuff. Yeah, yes, that's
yeah.
it
I
really.
think that makes sense, right? Like try to being accountable by yourself. That I want to do this, so I have this event coming on every Saturday. So I'm sure, like whatever I have, I've spent every day like 1 hour each day to kind of build something, like kind of make something so that we have something to show on a Saturday, every Saturday, which is very good. So like, are you working with someone else, or you are like independent and doing this whole thing by yourselves?
Yeah, so I don't have a co-founder, so like it's just I'm responsible for Weekend Club, but I do have my friend James McKinvin, who runs a podcast called the Marketing Mashup,
Mhm.
and also a podcast productized service called Strico. So he helps me run sessions. So we kind of take it in turns. So like I'll do 2 a month, he'll do 2 a month. But yeah, he's great. He runs them very well. possibly better than I do. And yeah, he's just very helpful, kind of sounding board.
Nah, like I love what you're doing. I'm like just keep it like I'm like very like I like so there are like two communities, right? There is one which is kind of built by brands as a like as to support their customers, and then there is someone like you like built a like individual person creating communities, which is also a very huge like I've seen a lot of people just doing that, right? So you mentioned
Yeah.
in the initial like conversation Nest Labs, right? Which is run by and
Mm,
right, so she's an individual doing this by herself, like which is amazing, right? And I love like it's very inspiring to kind of learn about the journey and like why they did what they did, right? So which is like super helpful and super awesome. Charlie, like what is that one community that you look up to and get inspired by and try to kind of implement those things? I mean, if you could.
yeah. So there's some really good community. Like I've kind of taken inspiration from a bunch of communities. I mean, the number one is probably just the indie hackers community, even though it's like a public one. That like that kind of started me off in this journey. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people I met from there, and like ideas I got from that like, just changed my life really. And I've applied to Weekend Club. So I think indie hackers is like number one. I learned some interesting things looking at a few like Nest Labs is
Mhm.
interesting how they do things like. Um, and Laura does this thing called Mind Match, where she will introduce two people to like have a conversation. I thought it was a very interesting way of like kind of starting to build, because Nest Lab started as an audience from the Maker Mind newsletter, I think,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and that was an interesting way of like to take it from an audience to like a community where people kind of know each other and build relationships. And so that got me thinking of like, okay, I wonder how I do that through an app called Donut. So that automatically introduces people on our Slack.
On
So
Slack.
it's slightly different, but like, it's like a similar kind of use case. So I think that's one to look up to. There's another one called Visualize Value, which is quite popular. That's a Slack
Mhm.
as well. But they do quite interesting like office hours. Like it's like kind of general discussions, but where you try and solve each other's problems and stuff. And we do that kind of like loosely at Weekend Club, but I think that's made me want to start like a more specific kind of um, like event like that. Well, not event, but like, an hour conversation every week or two where we just kind
Yeah.
of talk through each other's challenges and stuff. So yeah, those are, I mean, a couple that spring to mind that, I took some inspiration from recently.
Yeah. 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 All right. Thanks a lot, Charlie, for coming on the show. This amazing to kind of hear your journey building Weekend Club. For folks who want to learn more about Weekend Club or you, where can they find online?
Yep. So to find out more about Weekend Club, go to weekendclub.co or just Google Weekend Club and it should show up. Or follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Charlie R. Ward. Yeah, we do 30-day free trials for those wanting to join Weekend Club, and yeah, we have quite like thorough onboarding. So like, I'll make sure like, you'll be fully briefed on like, what to expect when you turn up. But it's a very welcoming, very fun community with people building some great stuff. So yeah, if you're interested, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, if you are an indie hacker, I'm sorry, it's a meta, right? If you are creating something and you want to like meet other interesting people, you know where to go. It's weekendclub.co, or you can find Charlie on Twitter. So uh, yeah, that's the